Hey friends, this is Audie Cornish, host of CNN This Morning and The Assignment, and guess what? Every story you care about, every angle you want unpacked is now streaming on CNN. That means you can catch my show or other CNN programming whenever you want on your favorite device. And a subscription also gets you access to exclusive video series and unlimited articles. So subscribe to CNN at cnn.com/subscription.
Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with his plight?
Aha!
Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia,
and essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and joining us today is our very, very, very special guest, former Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey, a good friend of mine for many years, good friend of Chairman Garcia's, an accomplished elected official, accomplished academic, a great writer for the New York Post, a leader on important fights in terms of public safety, clean energy, hospital care, one of my heroines for sure, known her forever. We first met when she was lieutenant governor under George Pataki. We met again when she ran for governor against my boss, Peter Vallone, the Speaker of the Council, in a three-way race. And I've always told Betsy that if Peter Vallone hadn't been running in that race, I would have been working in her campaign.
Well, and Peter Vallone was a fabulous person, a fabulous public leader, just a great guy.
The best of the best. So,
the best of the best.
So let's begin talking about the best of the best. And what we don't have in this mayor election coming up is the best of the best. Betsy and Jesse, let me set the stage for the conversation. You have a three-way race. You have Andrew Cuomo, who is the governor, who was beat in the Democratic primary in June. You have Curtis Sliwa, and he's running as an independent. You have Curtis Sliwa, who's running as the Republican. And you have the candidate who won the Democratic primary, who, frankly, in my not-so-humble opinion, is not a Democrat. He's a Democratic socialist. He has no business being in the Democratic Party at all, much like Bernie Sanders or AOC. These people are radical socialists. They use the Democratic Party as opportunists, and they're a very dangerous phenomenon. What troubles me, and the reason I say this is the most important mayoral election in our history, is as follows. Mondami is totally unqualified, number one. We can go into detail. Number two, he's a sympathizer for Islamicism, not anti-Muslim. I'm not anti-Muslim. I'm an anti-Islamist. I'm against the hegemony drives of extreme radical Islamists who want to subjugate any other religion to their worldview. To them, there's only one true God, and they impose it at the edge of a sword. That's part of some of the religious tracts, part of some of the political tracts. And they're dangerous. In every place they've been, they've subverted other religions. They've destroyed relics of Buddhism, of Hinduism. They've driven Jews and Christians out of the Middle East. They're infiltrating all over Europe. And now we have somebody who's an apologist for them running for the mayoralty. And he's a radical socialist who believes you can give free stuff away and everything will be fine. And you can keep your tax base and your important contributors. So this is, to my mind, the most important mayoral race. Betsy, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that if, in fact, Mamdani wins, and I retain some cautious hopefulness, not optimism, but hopefulness that we can still defeat him. But if he wins, before long, what you will see in New York is criminal bedlam, financial disaster, really bankruptcy, probably by next July, and an unleashing of anti-Semitic forces in schools and colleges especially, but also on the streets across New York. It's going to be a very frightening time. And I say I'm cautiously somewhat hopeful because when I look at the early returns, we see voting up 540%. Early voting turnout is more than 5 times what it was in the last election. And we also see that the profile of early voters is now much older. 60% are over age 50. So that's not reflected in the polls, but it will be reflected in the outcome at the ballot box. And that gives me some guarded optimism that we could defeat him.
Well, Jesse, you're in a difficult position because you are the vice chair of the state Republican Party and you are the county chair of the Suffolk Party. So it's very, very hard as a party official, a Republican, to say, don't vote for Sliwa, vote for Cuomo. And I understand that. But you're also somebody who's a deep community leader who cares about what's going on in your community in Suffolk County. On the Katz and Cosby show, we just had one of your friends and colleagues, Bruce Blakeman, who's the county executive of Suffolk County, and he says he can put police patrols on the border between Queens and Nassau County, and he's very afraid that the cooperation of law enforcement and anti-terrorism on a police department run by a Madami appointee is going to fall onto the wayside and therefore be a national security threat. What are your thoughts about that, Jesse?
My thoughts are never in my years, and probably never in anybody's years in here, have we ever thought that this great city of ours that we live in, we cherish, it is the center of the economic, international economic center. It is the center of power and culture, would be fallen to the leadership of either a Democrat, socialist, communist, or a disgraced governor who resigned because of various allegations of sexual harassment. It's the worst of two choices. It's like holding your nose and which way you're going to go. In my position of the party, everyone's been talking lately, and I support those individuals and understand what they're talking about in terms of asking Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race. The problem here, and it was the same with Mayor Adams, is that this should have been done in the summer before the ballot was locked in. Because, listen, voters, they're busy, making sure they stay safe in the streets of New York based on Democratic power. They're running from job to job to make ends meet. They are trying to keep up with their families, whether it be Little League, PTAs, and such as that. They don't have the time to really get in deep like we do. They're going to see these individuals on the ballot regardless, and that may trigger support for these individuals. So the time for this, for Mayor Adams specifically and Curtis Sliwa to have dropped out of this race so it can make it a race between two very flawed Democrats, should have been in the summer. But we're at the case where we are now.
So what do we do?
I agree with everything Jesse said. So smart. Smart.
So far, the problem right now that we have is, what we have in this, pot, this cauldron, is more than philosophy, more than ideology. We have egos and we have pride, and that is what is going to lead to the demise of the city. Like Betsy said, I'm hopeful that the city can be saved by not electing Zohar Mandami as a proud New Yorker who visits there and does business there and sees New York City as the center of basically our globe. But I'm hopeful, but the pragmatic part of me doesn't see it happening. And I think one of the things that we need to begin. Go ahead.
Oh, Jesse, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was going to say we need to look ahead and think about how we can protect ourselves if the worst comes to pass, the worst meaning Mondani's election. And I will say this, that it really tees up the gubernatorial race because many of your listeners may not know this, but the governor of New York has the power under the Public Officers Law and the state constitution, has the power to remove any mayor in the state, any mayor, and the mayor does not have had to commit some sort of illegality. Doesn't have to mean that there's a crime that's been committed. The governor, using his or her own judgment, can remove a mayor. The governor is required to provide a list of charges to the mayor, but there's no trial, no judicial second guessing. It's the governor's decision. And way back in 1932, FDR went after Tammany crooked mayor of New York City, Jimmy Walker, that way. Walker actually fled before his removal.
He got on a boat and fled to Europe.
That's right. But here's the important part, Judge. The courts said, ratifying what the law said, that the governor has, and this is a direct quote, the naked power of removal. And in fact, Governor Hochul talked about that earlier on, targeting Eric Adams, and Cuomo has talked about it. There's no question that that power exists. Now, we know that Hochul wouldn't have the backbone to remove Mamdani. She's already kowtowed to the far left and endorsed this communist. But the next governor of New York could do it.
Well, it raises an interesting question, Betsy. Betsy, you're absolutely right about the law and the constitutionality of this and the judicial decision. This is the problem I have, and this is a problem that Jesse and I have talked about over the years. We're doing the show together. You have a one-party state. It's a Democratic Party, and the state legislature is captive by the same left-wing influences that's captive the Democratic Party here in the city and the city council. This is a serious problem because right now, you're right, the governor can remove the mayor, specify charges, then remove with no judicial review, no vote of the legislative body. Nothing stops one of the radical leftists to protect in the legislature to protect Mamdani by putting in a bill and then passing it and then putting it on the governor's desk to make it subject to a trial.
You're quite right. You're quite right about that.
And that's what troubles me because going back to your point, I don't think Hochul has the moral courage or the intellectual capacity to understand the problem she's going to be in if he gets elected and all the things that are going to be pushed by the left-wing radicals to push in whatever public policy and economic policies they want. This is an awful, dangerous situation, which leads me to a discussion that Jesse and I have had over the years. It's absolutely essential, and I talk as the House Democrat, Jesse and Betsy. I want to see more Republicans in the state legislature.
Of course. And you know what's so bad, Judge, is that we're also facing, as I mentioned earlier, real financial bankruptcy. The city is already facing a $17 billion hole over the next 3 years. They're going to take in $17 billion less than they spend, and that's before the $10 billion in freebies Mamdani wants to spend on child care and free buses and other goodies. And so the city really is going to be facing collapse. And we, at one time, had a financial control board, remember, back in 1975, but we won't be able to re-trigger that because it requires the consent of the state legislature.
Exactly right.
And you know those legislative leaders, they've already bowed to Mamdani. They've endorsed Mamdani. They're not going to allow a financial control board to come in and handcuff him.
Well, I think that's exactly right. So, in other words, you know, when we play this business of politics or public policy or of governance, you have to play both sides, what I always refer to as a chessboard. And I always try to look 2 and 3 moves ahead when I'm doing this. And I can see exactly what they'll do on the other side, which means our only hope of survival, I respectfully submit, is more Republicans in the state legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, a governor who is not part of that crowd at all, that left-wing crowd, a Republican or a common-sense Democrat, if there are any of those,
that's right,
any of those left. That's what's absolutely required, because otherwise they will ram through anything and everything they want. and nobody's going to be able to protect us. Now, New York City requires, under the city charter, a balanced budget. The fact of the matter is, the only way you balance a budget is by, as both of you know, Jesse also having been a legislative hand as well, is you cut services or you raise taxes. The only tax you can really raise in any meaningful way in the city of New York on your own is a real property tax. Every other single tax you have to go to the state legislature. But if you think that Kathy Hochul and the Democrats in the Assembly and the Senate are going to protect the city of New York against tax increases, you're kidding yourself. It's naive.
Well, if I could just jump in here for a moment, as we look forward, and we really need to speak about, I don't want to use the word resistance, but how we are going to reclaim and renew the city of New York after a Mamdani victory. The actions of a governor will certainly, as Betsy had outlined, be a tool that needs to be in the chest. But here's the issue. Kathy Hochul is the biggest loser in this whole deal, because not only did she endorse Mamdani and initially and immediately take a hit in the polls with statewide voters, she got nothing back in return. This is a classic case of Kathy Hochul, where she gives up and gets nothing in return. There was no reciprocal endorsement. So there is still a primary going to be coming from the Democratic Socialists, certainly from her own lieutenant governor, who's
on the left.
From the left. So we're going to have that problem. But here's the other thing. The entire legislative agenda is going to be hijacked in 2026 by the Zohar Mamdani socialist communist agenda for New York City. And Kathy Hochul is going to have to fend that off for her statewide appeal, or kowtow and have to vote and support policies that are going to hurt her at the ballot box. This is a wrong message that she made. I mean, we saw her at a rally, and that is the new face of the Democratic Party here in New York and the country. Zohar Mamdani, the leaders of the Democratic Party, has said, this is our new face. This is our new standard bearer. And there, at a cheering crowd in Queens, was Mamdani, flanked by AOC, and flanked by Kathy Hochul.
And don't forget Bernie Sanders.
Is a problem. And Bernie Sanders.
The godfather or the grandfather of socialism in our country.
Exactly.
Jesse Garcia is so perceptive. That is a superb forecast of what's going to happen. Really, congratulations. The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, who have hijacked the Democratic Party in New York City, are now going to try to hijack the party statewide. We already have 8 members of the New York State Legislature who are DSA, and they punch way above their weight class. They're pushing for statewide rent control. They're pushing for unemployment benefits. Get this, for illegals who are not permitted to work. So they want the state to pay them unemployment benefits. But you can imagine how much unemployment insurance is going to cost for employers and employees across the state when you have to take all the illegals who aren't qualified to work in the state and give them unemployment benefits. That's just one more absurdity. But we have to get ready for this. You're right, Jesse, because that is going to be the new New York State Democratic Party, run by, captive of the DSA.
Well, on that not so optimistic note, we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Our good friend, the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of New York, Betsy McCaughey. We'll be taking a break. We'll be back in a moment for more interesting and important conversation with Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia,
and essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia,
and essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and continuing to be with us is our good friend, the former Lieutenant Governor of the State of New York, Betsy McCaughey. Betsy, you're an expert on a lot of things, but one of the things you've really taken the leadership on, and I'm very impressed because it's something I'm deeply concerned about, and I know our friend Jesse Garcia is concerned about, is I see going over the cliff with this energy crisis that's about to hit the city and state of New York and the suburbs. Would you explain?
Well, that's right. There are several aspects to it, but one of them that's particularly important this week is something called Local Law 97. Of course, very few people have ever heard of it, but they will feel the impact of it soon if they own a co-op or condo in the city of New York. About 1.4 million people, Judge, will be affected who live in 832,000 units across the 5 boroughs, because this law tells them that their buildings have to convert from oil heat or natural gas heat to electric heat solely at the expense of the owners of each apartment. So that means that they're going to be hit with a maintenance increase of over $1,000 a month, or huge assessments, and many will be forced to sell their co-ops or condos at fire sale prices because their neighbors will be trying to sell too. You know, the idea was to protect the environment, to reduce the carbon footprint. But the fact is that the way this law was written, it makes owning a house, a co-op or a condo simply unaffordable. And it's become a major issue in the election because of all the candidates. Only one supports rigorous enforcement of this law, and that is Zohran Mamdani. Here he is. He says he's for affordable housing, but not if you own your home.
Well, what that means is, number one, if I'm a owner of a residential building, there's disincentives for me to maintain my buildings. So you have people abandoning their buildings. So you have Bronx burning again. And if, as you correctly pointed out, Jesse, Betsy, if you own a co-op or a condo, it's your problem. You either have to pay it directly or by assessments. So what's going to happen is they talk about affordability, but you're going to drive the middle class out. And that's
right. Co-ops and condos are middle-class housing in the outer boroughs. I was out in Queens just yesterday. Garden apartments, thousands and thousands and thousands of them all across northwest and northeast Queens. And the people who occupy those garden apartments are desperate for somebody in City Hall to listen to their plight.
And Mamdani is not that guy. Jesse, your thoughts?
We've discussed this for a long time and have led the charge to the failure of this. What they're really trying to also do is legislate out home ownership almost completely. They don't want any of these young families or anyone else to build equity in their property. It's, again, the big government, big communist, socialist government coming in.
This is socialist policy. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, taking over the housing stock in the city of New York. And you know that it's not going to stop there. I mean, I know Senator Matera has been leading the fight in the state Senate. He's a Republican from Long Island. He's one of my favorite friends. And in fact, I recruited him to run. And he has been going after this law and other laws, like those that prevent new construction to have, gas or natural gas or oil connections, and forcing everyone to go on to the electric grid. First and foremost, we don't have the load, the energy load to fuel all this. That's first and foremost. We're, again, getting ahead of the science, like the Democrats have always accused everyone else of doing, but they're the ones that are doing it. And number two, why should we have that change? It hurts families. It hurts the economy. It hurts labor, unions in the trades and such. We need to give the freedoms back to those entrepreneurs who are creating our housing stock and our housing opportunities. I mean, seriously, like this law and the ban on new construction with gas and fossil fuels. We don't need a ban. We need a plan, as Mario Matera says. And what we need to do is bring back common sense to this. Again, we're not going to have the energy load to be able to provide the power to these locations. It's just not there. But and then we've seen also, again, Kathy Hochul, when it comes to the ban on natural gas and fossil fuels in new construction, she's looking to delay that a year. In fact, a letter is being circulated amongst the lawmakers to delay it till past the 2026 election. Why?
It's all about her. It's all about electoral politics for her.
Now it's all about electoral politics. It's okay. They'll delay it a year so that they can get elected. They can get their piece of the pie. They can get their greed. They can get their influence and power positions back at the expense of the New York resident.
That's so disgraceful, Jesse. I'm so glad you explained that. And you're so right. The fact is we need to produce more energy of every kind in New York to support a real economic boom here. We need to convert the New York from the evacuation state to the opportunity state. And if we're going to build more industries here, we need fracking, we need natural gas, we need nuclear power, safe nuclear power, those smaller generators, and we need every kind of energy possible, and a lot more of it than we're currently producing.
Well, the problem is, and it was just a case on this, challenging the state climate law, Jesse and Betsy, and the court unfortunately correctly said, look, as a judge, this is in essence what the judge said. In essence, he said, I don't have the power to get the legislature and the governor off the hook that they created, the problem they created. I can't legislate and say, change the law. I can only enforce whether the law was passed procedurally correctly. And it's the law, it then falls back into the realm of a political public policy decision where I'm not sanguine about the results because the climate activists are part and parcel of the radical left social policy. So what do we do about this?
Well, we have to campaign for freedom as well. Jesse used that word before. I was so impressed. He said, we want the freedom to drive the kind of car we want, the freedom to buy the kind of stove we want, the freedom to heat our homes the way we want to, and in an affordable way. Nobody can afford to heat a home with electricity. New Yorkers pay among the very highest electric rates in the country. Right, Jesse?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is only going to make it worse.
Right.
And what happens when this law drives people out, property values go down, there's no tax base to pay for the revenues that cities and counties and the state government needs. So you don't have a tax base. You don't have a grid, as correctly pointed out by both of you, that's sustainable to give all the energy that we need. What happens then? People are going to freeze to death in the winters and drop over with strokes and heart attacks in summer because there's not going to be air conditioning. And the hospitals won't, their technology runs on energy too. Businesses run on technology. The financial community runs on it. The entertainment does. The media does. Tell me a business that doesn't use large amounts of energy. And how about people using energy all day long in their personal lives? So what are you going to have? Toaster police going room to room, making sure that I don't have my bagel in too long. I mean, really, instead of having a darker toast, I have to have a lighter toast.
You probably will.
Well, that's very funny, but it isn't a funny situation. It's really you have really scoped it out, because the fact is this is going to have a major impact on quality of life and affordability for all New Yorkers.
Let me ask you this. I want to shift gears with you both, and I want to raise another issue with you. I'm deeply concerned about the issue of public safety in our streets, and I'm particularly concerned about the Democratic and the radical socialists and the Antifa crowd and the Black Lives Matter crowd. and the Islamist crowd war against our ICE agents who are trying to make our cities safe. Those cities that have cooperated with the president have gotten restoration of a substantial amount of law and order and a diminution of violent crime. And yet you have people who are out there saying that ICE are Nazis, they have to be confronted. It seems to me they're aiding, abetting, and violating the law. They should be definitely prosecuted for this. Any public official, a mayor, governor, a police commissioner who doesn't cooperate with law enforcement and the federal authorities, I think, are violating their oath of office. They should be removed. Betsy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I believe that the president does have the authority to bring in the National Guard and to bring in ICE and to protect law enforcement in the cities. You know, there's a very, very old case, but you're so learned, you'll know it, Mott versus Martin, 1827. And in that case...
I was born a couple of years after that, Betsy.
I was just a kid then. In that case, the Supreme Court ruled that the president's authority to use law enforcement, whether it's the National Guard, the military, or other federal officers, to enforce safety on the streets, as well as federal buildings, protecting federal buildings and officers, is not to be second-guessed by the judiciary. So I see judges in Illinois and California constantly trying to second-guess the president's determination that these officers are needed there. And they're all going to be overturned in the Supreme Court because no one's ever challenged that 1827 ruling. Judges aren't supposed to supervise law enforcement day by day, right?
No, that's exactly right. And by the way, the fact of the matter is they've been issuing what we call in the business, and you're a PhD in constitutional history, you understand this, that they're doing these nationwide injunctions.
That's right.
Nationwide injunctions are on their face, except on very exceptional circumstances, are illegal. It's beyond the scope of authority of a United States District Court judge in Seattle to tell the rest of the country what it can and can't do with respect to policies that have been enacted by the Congress and executed by the President of the United States.
Well done.
So, Jesse, final thought for this segment.
Well, my final thoughts, it's funny, Betsy and I did a show. We did a show on Sunday morning regarding this issue and the fact that the court, the Ninth District Court, ironically, out west,
the Ninth Circuit,
which is friend.
The Ninth Circuit.
Ninth Circuit, thank you, I'm sorry. Which is no friend to the Constitution or to Republican efforts, ruled in favor of the Trump administration.
Yes.
And one in Illinois ruled against, and this is going to go to the Supreme Court. Well, the best thing about this is that Donald Trump 2.0, his second presidency, has been one that has been well prepared and well thought out, and is now being well executed in just shy of 11 months. The actions he has taken are ones that have been well thought out and within the boundaries of the law. I think he fully expected that his actions to bring law and order, to rein in spending, to cut the spending to partisan NGOs, not-for-profit groups, and the like, the executive powers that he has, he was prepared because he knew that the resistant Democrats that have Trump derangement syndrome, they care more about saying no to Trump than they are about the American people. We're going to take him to court. And he's been successful more times than not. And I think that just demonstrates and shows that when you operate under the law and you operate under the guise of the law, you're going to be successful for the American people. There is no doubt that in Illinois, in Chicago, in Portland, that the city leaders there have advocated their responsibilities to keep safe federal properties, federal facilities, and federal officers. And President Trump has used the National Guard properly to bring law and order there. Just look at Washington, D.C., and look at the other areas. In fact, in Tennessee, he was invited to come in I believe it was Nashville.
Memphis.
I'm sorry, Memphis. I apologize. Memphis to come in. So it's not a partisan issue. It's not a partisan issue to not want someone to be stabbed, hurt, and killed. It should not be partisan. what we want to do is prevent that from happening by supporting our police, making sure we have good laws, not like cashless bail or, raise the age, which coddle criminals and handcuff cops and prosecutors. We want to bring safety to our communities. And I think that the people are responding to that through America, through the actions of President Trump. And the courts are seeing that he's doing it properly within the guidelines of the law and his powers as an executive.
Well said.
Jesse tied a nice bow around that topic.
Well, I have to now tie a nice bow around the second segment. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We've been absolutely delighted to have our good friend, the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of New York, Betsy McCaughey, one of the nicest people I know, one of the most brilliant people I know. Always a delight to spend time with you. Betsy, thank you very much on behalf of Chairman Garcia and myself for being with us on the show. We look forward to having you again in the weeks and months to come.
I'm so impressed this show is a public service.
Well, you're a public service, and keep up the good work. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please stay tuned for our final segment of Let the Record Show with Chairman Garcia and myself. Stay tuned for more important and interesting conversation. We'll be back in but a few moments.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show with Judge Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Levine.
You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6.
If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?